Timothy Guy was an 18-year-old from Forsyth County, Georgia. He was a friendly kid who loved animals. On Friday, February 6, 1987, Timothy allegedly got picked up from his job. The next Monday, Timothy didn't show back up for work. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. I grew up a country boy. Yes, it's true. Don't laugh. Don't let this long hair and these Iron Maiden shirts and my prior life in Las Vegas fool you. I grew up in the hills of Pennsylvania. Leechburg, to be exact. There was a pasture with real cows in it 300 feet from my bedroom window. And as a little kid, I would go over to the fence and talk to them. Later, it became a huge cornfield where I stole corn to shuck and used the kernels to throw at houses around Halloween. I've shoveled manure, lots of it, for my grandfather's extensive garden. And even though I haven't cut a blade of grass since 1997, I've still spent more time on a riding lawnmower than most people. Do I miss it? Nope, not one bit. Give me concrete, steel, and city lights over all of that. Although I still love cows. In contrast, Timothy Guy would have been a country boy his entire life. Just give him some horses to ride and train and clean, and that was all he needed. And he got a job doing just that. Then Tim allegedly left his dream job on Friday like he usually did. But he didn't return the next Monday. And we're left to wonder if something happened elsewhere or down on the farm. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, charleyproject.org. Timothy Guy grew up in a large family with many siblings. He had a learning disability which slowed his schoolwork. But anyone who knew him realized nothing would hold Tim back from pursuing his passion, caring for animals, especially horses. And Tim got his first job caring for them, working right down the street from his parents' house. His supervisor then let Tim know of a similar job with better pay. But it was far from his home, and he'd have to stay there during the week. But that's what Tim did, starting work at Sleepy Fox Farm in October 1986. But then something went wrong, an issue Tim didn't want to talk about with his parents or anyone else. And Tim decided to spend December 1986 at home. However, out of nowhere, Tim went back to the farm in January 1987. And as far as everyone knew, everything was fine. So on February 6th, 1987, a Friday, the usual plan would have been for Tim to go home for the weekend, with his father Warren picking him up. However, there was a horse show that weekend, and Tim's father believed Tim would be going to that show, and thus not coming home. On Monday, February 9th, Tim's supervisor, Phil Klinger, called Warren, saying Tim didn't show up for work. Phil went on to say that a guy named Jeff, who was driving an old Impala, had picked Tim up the previous Friday. Tim's father knew nothing about any of this. Tim was never seen again. This Jeff has never been tracked down, and 32 years have passed. We at Unfound believe disappearances involving children and the mentally challenged to be some of the most serious we cover. Why? Because bad people use these groups' innocence and trusting nature against them. So please listen closely and think about the answers to these questions. Number 1, why wouldn't Tim exactly say what happened at the farm when he decided to not go back in December 1986? Number 2, why is it that stories differed as to who picked Tim up February 6th, 1987? And number 3, what are we to make of a recent message sent from Phil Klinger's daughter to a blogger in regards to this case? Tim's family is very convinced foul play happened, yet even they are not exactly sure of the motive. The guest for this episode is Tim's father, Warren Guy. Unfound News. We've gained many new listeners due to the Steve Pankey interview a couple weeks ago. With that attention has come new questions and complaints about the audio. Yes, the way the audio is recorded has changed due to Google's desire to make it impossible to use Android phones to record phone calls. However, I have found a workaround. But for all of you, this is something important to remember. If you are not using Podomatic, Spotify, Stitcher, or iTunes to gain access to this program, you are using an application that is not an authorized distributor of Unfound. As such, I have no control over the quality of what you receive. So please, if you are not using one of those four, please consider changing now. Next, work on the next Unfound book is about to begin. It will be Volume 2 of Season 2. What it also means is I'm going to start looking for transcribers again. I'm sure I will use people who have already transcribed in the past, but I'll be looking for new people too. And yes, I still have all the emails from the people who've contacted me inquiring how they can be involved in the process of bringing these books to life. I promise to respond to all of you eventually. And finally, another weekend has passed, another disc golf tournament, and another 3 rounds of me playing fairly well. My head is in a good place on the course, and this is certainly going to mean my scores will be getting better. I'm playing in Ocala this weekend, and I'm going there to win. Where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on YouTube for the Unfound Live Show. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. This week, I need to thank Ruth. You can also contribute at PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. That is also the email address. Merchandise, the books at Amazon.com in both ebook and print form. Do not forget the reviews. Shirts at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. Cards at makeplayingcards.com/sell/Unfound Podcast. And please mention Unfound at all true crime websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the father of Tim Guy, Warren Guy. Warren, welcome to Unfound.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Warren. Let's start here, as we usually do on the program. Let's talk about Tim and the rest of the children that you may have. How many kids do you have, Warren?
Well, I've got 7 in all.
7? Wow.
Yeah, well, 2 stepchildren, but I claim them because we raised them all.
Uh-huh. Okay. And so how many boys, how many girls?
6 boys to 1 girl.
Wow. Okay. Well, she got a little outnumbered there. Okay. And in all of that, where did Tim fall in the age group of all of these kids?
In the middle, believe it or not.
Right in the middle. Okay. So he was number 4, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And would you say that how would you compare Tim, as a young boy into being a teenager? How would you compare him to your other kids? Was he like the most outgoing, the shyest? How would you explain it?
No, he was outgoing. He liked a lot of attention.
Did he?
And yeah, he did. But he could get along with anybody. He never met a stranger. He's just a kind-hearted person.
Kind-hearted person. Okay. And of course, I grew up in the '80s, and I would have been very close to his age at the time that he disappeared. What was he into back at the time in the '80s? Was he into sports, or was he into hunting? What was he into?
We'd go fishing.
Yeah.
Fishing mostly when he was younger,
Yeah.
When he got up into teenagers, he went over to a horse farm not far from here, and he worked over there just to ride the horses.
He liked horses, huh?
Oh yeah, that's just.
When do you remember personally? What age did he start getting into that? being interested in horses and maybe taking care of them, riding them, etc.?
I say it's about 15.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you feel about that?
Well, fine. If he enjoyed it, I didn't mind him doing it. He go down and work for nothing, just to ride the horse for a couple of hours.
Okay.
It was fine. I thought it was good for him, really.
Okay. And I do understand that, and the listeners, of course, understand that you and I have talked a couple times before we're doing this interview. Did Tim have was he like a slow learner, some sort of learning disability or something like that? How would you explain that?
To me, he didn't, but I was around him all my life. But, they put him in a special ed in school.
Uh-huh.
But as far as being smart, he helped me on carpenter work. He's good at that. He had my brother roofing. He's good at that.
Mm-hmm.
He's smart. He's smart as a whip, really. He just didn't like the schoolwork.
Didn't like. Okay, so it might have been a school thing, not necessarily an intelligence thing.
He just didn't like school.
Just didn't like school. Okay. All right. Like a lot of kids.
I had a little learning disability, but I wouldn't notice it because I was around him all the time.
Right.
Somebody else could have, but he's just a sweet boy,
Uh-huh. So I guess what you're saying is if I would have met him back at the time, there's no way I would have been able to tell that, that if he even did have some, I would have just thought that he was a guy with a decent IQ.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But still he was in these special classes in school, going through junior high school.
Well, yeah, they considered them hypers when it was.
Okay.
Many of us teachers, they'd talk about how nice he was. He'd open the doors for him, hold them open for the whole class to go in.
Uh-huh. Okay. Did he graduate? I mean, I realized he was just 18 when he disappeared. Did he graduate from high school, or was he in the process?
They let him out of school when he was, I think, 6.
When he was 16.
Yeah.
How do you mean let him out? What does that mean to the rest of us?
Well, they just thought he wouldn't learn no more, I guess. So
Okay.
They just wasn't interested in school.
Okay. All right. So he did not have a high school diploma at the time of his disappearance.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Now, would you say that when he was let out, I'm going to guess being that he was 18 when he disappeared in 87, so he got let out maybe in 1985, something like that. Did he then devote all his time to working with these horses? What else did he do now that he wasn't going to school?
Well, he worked with me some. And he, like I say, worked on this little farm right below the house some. He worked with my brother some briefing.
Okay.
But he worked. When he went down to Don Lester had a horse farm right about a half mile from the house, and he'd go down and work for him. Just so he could ride the horse for a couple hours.
Right. And this would be the first horse farm he worked at?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the guy's name who ran that farm that was very close to where you lived?
It was Don Lester.
Don Lester. Okay. Did you know him very well? Had you known him for a long time, or?
I'd known him. I did not personally a lot, but I've met him a few times. Yeah.
Okay. So you were fine. You said he wasn't getting paid though. He was just kind of down there, volunteering, something like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Did he get to ride the horses and everything while he was down there?
Yeah. Yeah. He taught him how to ride. He could ride horses good.
Okay. And what were the horses down there used for? Was this a racing farm, or were they work horses, or what were they?
They just boarded horses down there.
Just took care of them.
Yeah, just people take them over to board the horses.
Okay. So, are you saying it's like a variety of horses? I'm not much into horses, but I know thoroughbreds. I know just quarter horses.
Just people's horses that they didn't have no place to keep them. They keep them there just like the dog place,
Okay. And Tim liked working down there, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did he, I guess he worked there, but volunteered there, he wasn't getting paid. How long was he there before he moved to Sleepy Fox Farm? How long?
I'd say a year, I guess about a year or maybe a little more.
A little more than a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that whole time, though, he was living with you at home. Maybe you have other children who were also living at home at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And what were you? And what was your job at the time? What were you doing?
Trim carpenter.
Trained carpenter. All right. Trim carpenter. Trim carpenter. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Trim carpenter. Okay. And so you'd get to see him pretty much every day, when he'd come home or everything? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How would you say your and Tim's relationship was, in his teenage years? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Close?
It's wonderful.
Okay.
All of them were, really.
All of your kids. That's good to hear. Okay. So he's working there, and then I do have to ask this. Did he have any problems at this time? Once again, before he went to Sleepy Fox Farm, did he ever have any problems with the law? Did he have any problems with drugs, any addictions, anything like that you knew of?
I never seen him smoke a cigarette.
Okay. All right.
They didn't do drugs, no.
Okay. Okay. So now let's talk about the Sleepy Fox Farm. This is a place that, my understanding in my notes, he didn't start working there till approximately October of 1986. And so he worked there, and we're going to get into the specifics of that. But how did it come about that he ended up going there in the first place?
Well, see, Don, the fellow he worked for down here, he let him work just to ride the horses. But Don couldn't pay him. He said, I know some people up here, you should go up there and work on their farm, and they'll pay you. You should make you some money.
Yeah. Okay.
Because cleaning out stables is what he done. So Don ended up there.
Okay. How did you, when you heard, and now this Sleepy Fox Farm, how far was it from where you were living?
It's, I'd say 25 miles.
Wow. How did you feel about that? Him going to work at this place 25 miles away?
Well, it's all right. He saw home just about every day. He saw my wife every day when she come home.
Okay, so this was a situation. Please.
She come home most weekends. She come home.
Okay.
But not every weekend, but most of them.
So this was a situation where he would stay there for the week?
Yeah.
Did they have like a bedroom for him? What was the sleeping arrangement at this place?
Well, he's a trailer behind the house.
Okay.
They stayed in.
Okay. He was staying at a trailer.
Yeah.
Now, did Tim have a driver's license? Could he drive a car, or how would he get there and back for these weekends?
I'd take him, or one of his brothers would.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He didn't have a driver's license, no.
Right. Okay. So this the previous boss, or this boss, like in 1986, says, you know what? There's this place that needs somebody. Why doesn't Tim go work there? Tim says he's going to go do that. You're fine with driving and picking him up, on the weekend, so he could come home, maybe bring some clothes home to wash or something like that. And how did you think? Did you get to meet anybody there at the farm? Like the first time you drove him over there, did you talk to anybody there, or did you just kind of just drop him off?
Yeah, I met Phil and his wife both.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Dawn, and she had his little brother. I can't remember his name.
Okay. And how many people? What was your impression of how many people were working, or at least even living at that farm, the Sleepy Fox Farm? How many people do you think were there?
Phil, Dottie, Dawn. Of course, Dawn was too young to be working on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
She was about 13 or 14.
Okay.
And Dave Stewart and his wife, Sally Stewart. They was all family.
Okay.
See, Sally was Phil's daughter, and Dave Stewart was her husband.
Okay. And did Dave have any kids that were on the farm premises? Or not?
No, I don't think they had any kids. Not at that time.
Okay.
I really never. I don't really think I ever met Dave. To tell you the truth.
Okay. So there were some adults there, and at least one child there, Dawn, and we're going to talk about Phil and Dawn a little later in the conversation for sure, of course. So there were some people there, but were the owners, did the owners live on the premises? Did they live around there, or where did they live in relation to the farm?
I'm sorry, I heard they lived in Florida. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right, and to this day, have you ever met any of these people who owned Sleepy Fox Farm?
I've never met any of them.
Okay, and we'll talk about them a little later. Had you personally, I'm guessing maybe Tim was more into the horse business than you were, had you personally, as an adult, ever heard of the Sleepy Fox Farm before Tim started working there?
No, I hadn't.
No. Okay. Okay, and would you say that Sleepy Fox Farm was kind of the same place like where Tim was working? Sleepy Fox took care of people's horses, they'd send them there and they'd take care of them, or what?
Yeah, they boarded horses there.
Okay.
They did have a horse riding ring out there. They'd have a horse show sometimes.
Okay. So they'd just feed the horses, make sure they got their exercise. If there's anything, any sicknesses or anything, they'd make sure that they got a veterinarian there or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what was, the way you understand it, what was Tim's job going to be there?
Well, he'd clean the stables, plus he'd ride the horses, keep your exercise.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And were there, to your knowledge, was there any other what I would call hired help? Anybody, other young people or older people, working there during the week and then leaving on the weekends, or did it seem to you that Tim was the only person who was going in and out like he was?
Tim was the only one.
Only one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Tim starts working there, and are we right, October 1986?
Yeah, it's October.
Okay.
Probably the latter part of October.
Okay. And so you drop him off for that first time. He's there a week. You said that he would call you. How did it seem to you, at least early on, how he was doing at the shady Sleepy Fox Farm? How was he doing there?
He seemed to be doing fine.
He was liking it.
Yeah, he liked it.
All right. No complaints, any problems? Did he ever say maybe that Phil, his boss, that we've already mentioned, was giving him a hard time? Did he mention Dave, anybody, or it just seemed pretty good to you?
It seemed pretty good to close to December.
Okay. All right, so he's working there. He's getting paid. You're picking him up on the weekends. Was he, in retrospect, because, I've learned enough about disappearances that sometimes kids tell their brothers and sisters more than they tell their parents, because, some things you just don't want to talk to your parents about. In retrospect, after Tim disappeared, did any of your other children come to you and say, you know what, Dad, Tim told me this about those early days of working at the farm? Anything like that? Any complaints that you found out afterwards?
Afterwards, Stacy told me about him he took Tim up there one morning, and they pulled a gun on him. Somebody out in the stables did.
Wow.
And Tim said, this is my brother.
Huh.
So they left him alone.
All right, but this son's name is Stacy? It's a boy, Stacy?
Yeah.
Okay. But he didn't tell you this until after Tim disappeared?
He didn't tell me before.
Huh. Did he ever give you any reason that he didn't tell you? He just didn't want you to worry? What do you think his reasoning was?
That's probably what it was.
Okay. So Tim's working there, seemingly in good standing, getting paid, doing what he liked to do, riding, cleaning, just being around the horses, staying in this trailer. Seems like a pretty good situation, especially if he's into that. I'm not so much into horses, but if he is. But then what happened? We go through November. Was he at your place for Thanksgiving, or did he stay at? Do you even remember that? Did he stay at the farm?
I believe he did come on for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
He did, yeah.
Okay. So when was the first time that you maybe started thinking that maybe things weren't going so well at the farm.
But Tim stayed home the whole month of December.
Okay, and why was that? Did he ever give you a reason?
Yeah, he did. That's what I was trying to think. He called and he said, Tim, we better come up and get Tim, because he said, I'm going to kill the little SOB if you don't. I was at work, and my wife told me when I got home, so he said, Tim said, she told my wife, said, don't come in the house, just drive up and I'll walk out to the car. So I got a load wrench and those crowbars what I got. And drove up there, and Tim walked out to the car. And on the way home, I said, what's going on, Tim? He said, Phil was mad at his daughters trying to take it out on me, his kids.
Okay. So how many, so we talked about Dawn. How many kids did Phil have on the premises of the farm?
3.
3. All right, so besides Dawn. All right, so there were these kids of Phil's. And so when you get there, of course, like Phil calls you, he says something's going on, calls Tim and SOB, you go up there, and do you even talk to Phil when you get there in December of 86?
Now, Tim said, don't come in the house, I'll come meet you in the yard.
Okay. All right. And you did that, and he came out, and Tim's explanation was that he was having a problem with Phil's kids, and Phil was taking it out on Tim, blaming it on Tim.
Yeah, he said Phil was having a problem with his kids, taking it out on him.
Okay. When you eventually got home, like you said, it's 20-some miles from the farm. When you got home, did you call back to the farm? You know, and ask, talk to Phil about this? Did you ever talk to Phil about any of this?
I didn't talk to him about it
at all. Okay.
Not about that.
Okay. Now, when you...
No, I'm sorry.
That's all.
Damn, we'd be going back.
Okay. So when you brought... What you're saying is when you brought Tim home, you were kind of thinking that he wouldn't be going back to that farm. That's what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay. So Tim, what does he do for the month of December of 86? Does he try to find another job? Is he just hanging out? What's he doing?
I just hanging out with the rest of the kids here. Two of them was married. 2 of them got married, but
okay.
No, he just hung out here and he goes visit his grandmother and come back here.
Okay.
Which is Christmas lunch with us.
Okay. I just have to ask, as his parent, and I think my dad might have been the same way. Did you not maybe say to him, "Hey Tim, if you're not going to be working at the farm, maybe you should think about getting another job"? Or did you maybe give him at least a little hard time about maybe doing something, or going back to school or something, or what?
I didn't think about going back to school, but I don't think he would have done that.
Okay. I guess I'm just asking, being that he was 18 years old, etc., that did you think that eventually he would start looking for another job, or do you think that you were going to have to give him a little push?
Well, I think that's when he did go up there and work for my brother for about, a couple of weeks.
Okay.
On roofing.
Okay. So we go through, so maybe he does do that. But you're thinking the last thing he's going to do is go back and work at the Sleepy Fox Farm. So we go through December. We get into early 1987. And once again, at any point during that month, let's say from early December to early January, does anybody, to your knowledge, from the farm call looking for Tim or to talk to Tim, whether it's Phil or Dave or Dawn, the daughter, anybody? Does anybody call looking for Tim at all?
In the month of December?
Yes.
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. Okay. All right. So he kind of just does his own thing for the month of December into January of 1987. And during that month, does Tim ever maybe even more open up about what went on at the farm that Phil was so ticked off? Does he ever, elaborate on it anymore?
No, not to me, he didn't.
Okay. So as far as you're concerned, the Sleepy Fox Farm topic just was never brought up at all.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So we get into January of 1987, and the way you explained it to me, and I think the listeners, now that they've heard so far in this interview, are going to be surprised by this. But Tim, out of the blue, goes back to Sleepy Fox Farm. Could you please explain what you remember about that day when you found out about that?
Well, I was at work, but my wife told me when we got home, she said she told him not to go back, but he said, they're all right. He said, but I think he knew more than his reason they tried to get him back up there. That's what I thought.
Well, let's not think. I just want you to tell me what you remember about that. So you come home from work, your wife tells you that Tim went back to Sleepy Fox Farm. You had to be pretty stunned.
Yeah, I didn't know what to say.
Okay. How did that come about? Did Tim call them? Did Phil call the house? How did that all happen?
That I don't know. Like I say, I was at work.
Well, was maybe your wife there? Was one of your other kids there to maybe explain to you? They never explained to you how that happened.
My wife was here. The only one I know would be. Well, the other kids probably here too, but.
Okay. All right. So even 32 years later, you're not sure if Tim called Sleepy Fox Farm saying, "Hey, can I come back?" or Phil called the house saying, "Hey, kid, why don't you come back?" You don't know to this day.
I'm not sure.
All right. Who drove him back up to the Sleepy Fox Farm?
I'm sure of that.
You're not sure of that either.
Okay.
Did nobody? Okay.
One of my children did.
Okay. So back in 1987, January 1987, when you found out that he went back, nobody in your family volunteered to say, "Yeah, I'm the one that drove him back." Nobody did that?
No.
Okay. You didn't? Did you ask your kids of any of? I mean, who are the possibilities? If I can ask, what are the possibilities?
Stacy would be the possibility.
Stacy. Okay, but Stacy never to this day has owned up to that.
Well, no, not really. I didn't. I just assumed that he took him up there.
Okay.
He don't want to hit him with the carbs.
Okay. And how much older is Stacy than Tim?
He's younger. 1 year younger.
Oh, 1 year younger. 1 year younger. Okay, so he's Tim's younger brother, possibly, we don't know for a fact, possibly drove Tim back to the Sleepy Fox Farm. I'm guessing because Tim told him to. Would this have been the occasion when Stacy said he had a gun pulled on him?
Yeah, I think that's when it was.
Okay.
Pretty sure it was.
Okay, so let me ask you this: when Tim was working there in October, November, into early December, were you the only person who ever drove and picked him up, or did anybody else in your family go and pick him up and drive?
I think Stacy did a couple of times.
Okay. Okay. So you find out Tim went back to work at the Sleepy Fox Farm. You're a little stunned by this, given what happened back in December. And we're still not sure how he made it back there, which is, I think, an interesting point. And did you go then pick him up at the end of the week? Did you talk to him? Did you call the farm and get Tim on the phone and say, "Hey, Tim, what are you doing?" Anything like that?
Well, he's all here just about every day.
Okay, and
but I was usually at work. He talked to my wife.
Mm-hmm. And at any time when he was talking to your wife, is your wife, would this have been Tim's mother or his stepmother?
Is it stepmother?
Stepmother, okay.
We still say.
Okay.
They all ours.
Okay, great. That's great. At any point, did Tim ever explain to her why he went back to the Sleepy Fox Farm?
No, that I know of.
Okay. All right. And you never asked him, "Hey, Tim, what's up?"
Just a misunderstanding with Phil, I guess.
Well, let's not guess. I don't want you to guess. I just want you to tell me what Tim said. If he ever told you the reason that he went back to the farm.
No, he didn't tell me the reason. I guess to make money.
Okay. Okay. And so did things continue the way they were before, where you would go pick him up at the end of the week for the weekend? Is that what continued into February of 87, or was it some different arrangement?
I'd pick him up maybe one time. Stacy might have picked him up another time. I don't know exactly.
Okay. And so you'd see him on the weekend after he came back from working at Sleepy Fox Farm again?
Yeah, I seen him one weekend.
Okay, and once again, I have to ask these questions because the listeners, I'm sure, are going to, and I want to know them too. At no time when you saw him, for example, that weekend, did you say to him, "Hey, Tim, I thought you were done at Sleepy Fox Farm after what happened back in December. What changed?" You never had that conversation with him?
No, because he seemed like he was okay.
Okay. All right, so he's working there. He did come home. He got him picked up. And so then we come to Friday, February 6th, 1987. Is that a day that the way you remember it, is that a day that you would have been picking him up to take him home, or what?
Well, I wouldn't know because he came, he had to pay a traffic ticket in Pine Mountain for driving without license.
Okay, and we're going to talk about it. Right.
Pine Lake, Georgia. I'm sorry, not Pine Mountain.
Okay.
But he said it was on Tuesday, and he came by and had to pay a ticket and went back to the ranch.
Okay. But he disappeared. But this Friday, though, I mean, the story, and we're going to be, we just have to understand you didn't know this at the time, but let me rephrase that. Let's put it this way. When did you find out that Tim was missing?
Well, it was Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
That Monday, because Phil called and said Tim hadn't showed up for work. And I said, well, I thought he was up there because he came by here on Tuesday. But Tim did call me Wednesday.
Okay.
On that Wednesday after he went back up there and he called me and he said, "I want to tell you I love you." That was it.
Okay.
I said, "I love you too, Tim." And that's the last words I heard.
All right. So what you're saying is you were of the understanding that for once Tim stayed the whole weekend at the Sleepy Fox Farm.
Yeah, they did, especially if they had the whole show or something up there.
Okay. But it was then on Monday, February 9th, 1987, that Phil calls you and says, "Hey, Tim never came back to work."
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm guessing you were a little surprised by that.
Yeah, because he's supposed to ride an Arabian Stallion on the horse show. And Tim wouldn't miss that for nothing.
Okay.
That's when I started, calling. I called the police and they said you had to wait 48 hours, I believe, to file a missing person report, which I don't agree with yet.
Okay. At that time that Phil called you on that Monday, did he ever say anything, and we'll get into this later, did he ever say anything about Tim getting picked up by anybody? During that phone call, when he called you on February 9th, 1987, did he ever say?
He said some fella named Jeff come by and picked him up.
Okay. He said that on that phone call on February 9th, 1987.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, that was on Friday night. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you have... Please.
We went up there. After he called Monday, we went up there Monday afternoon. And he had all of his clothes bagged up in bags. And one said, "You take them home with you." And he even had a check. He said, "Here's a check, Tim's check. If you want it, for the old back week's pay." I said, "I ain't taking that. That's Tim's." I said, "I ain't taking his money."
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew he wasn't coming back. And Dottie had washed his clothes and didn't go through his pants or nothing. And the wife did find the pill in his pants pocket. Bill said that's a horse vitamin. So I know,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Phil calls you on Monday saying that Tim never came back to work. He tells you that this guy Jeff picked Tim up on Friday. Do you have any? When he says Jeff, do you have any idea who that might be?
They never found a fellow named Jeff. I don't know a fellow named Jeff that would pick him up.
Okay. And to your knowledge, nobody named Jeff had ever picked Tim up at the farm before, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And like you said, when you went up there, once Phil called, you went up there, and you're telling me that they had all of his clothes packed?
Yeah, I'm in the black garbage bagged up. Says his wife said she had washed them.
Huh.
And my wife went through the pockets and found the peel and said, "You don't clean your pockets out before you wash your clothes?"
Uh-huh.
And Phil, yeah, but Phil said it's horse vitamin. So
I know you said this before, but I want to ask you again. Did you not ask them, why are you packing up? I realize that maybe Tim isn't here right at the second, but why are you packing up his clothes? He works here.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying about it. I thought he'd be back.
And what did they say?
They didn't say nothing. They just said, "If you don't take the check, you can have it." I said, "I don't want checks." I said, "His money."
Okay. But they once again had all his clothes folded as if...
They wasn't folded. They just threw it in the black garbage bag. It wasn't folded.
Okay.
Just like they knew he wasn't going to be back.
Okay. And so they tell you this, and there's this Jeff guy, but this is, once again, this was one of those rare weekends where Tim was not supposed to come home that weekend.
Yeah, I guess so. So he was off like Tuesday and Wednesday, I guess, because he called me Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So the reason you weren't concerned is because you didn't pick him up, weren't supposed to pick him up that previous Friday anyway.
That's right.
Okay. So at this point, Phil's telling you that he got picked up by this Jeff guy. He doesn't come back to work. They have his clothes all picked up. What are you thinking at that point?
Well, I didn't really like it. I didn't know what to think. So I was reading up, called the police as soon as I got back home. They said you had to wait 48 hours to file a missing person report. I think it's 48 or 60 or something like that. That's 2 years ago. I can't remember.
Okay.
But it just seems strange to me that they want me to take his check and his clothes too.
I agree with you. At any point when you saw Phil and his family on Monday, the clothes were there and the garbage bags, etc., did Phil ever expound or further explain who this guy Jeff was? Gave a last name, anything?
He didn't know his last name. That's what it said. But see, Phil said he left in the 72 Impala.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Stewart said he left in the white pickup. So that was another thing.
Yeah, right. And we will get into that, sure enough. But I just want to go one step at a time here, Warren, please. But he never, once again, he said Jeff, but he never, how did he even know Jeff? Did he ever explain how he even knew this guy, Jeff?
No. He said just had about 5'10", muscular build, short, about 5'10". That's all he knew. He didn't know his last name.
How did he even know Jeff?
I don't even know that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure the listeners are going to be getting a pretty good idea that story stinks. That something smells about that. But okay. So the police don't want to take your report right away, but when you finally do talk to them, what goes on?
Well, they go up there. I found a missing person report in Gwinnett County, not knowing that the farm was in Forsyth, because when you go up there, there's no sign saying Forsyth County.
Okay.
And it's just right past Swanee, which is in Gwinnett.
Okay, so there was like a kind of a jurisdictional issue here?
Yeah.
Okay. What county ended up being responsible for Tim's disappearance?
Forsyth.
Forsyth County, where Sleepy Fox Farm was.
Yeah.
Okay. What, to your knowledge, what did the police do? Did they go up there? Did they talk to Phil? Did they talk to his wife? Did they talk to Dave? Did they look around on the farm? What did they do?
They didn't do nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. I was up there talking to him. Vance Taylor said, I'll ride out there. It's already 4 o'clock. He's out riding around the ranch, but by himself. And he said, I'll ride out there and look around it before I go home. But, you know, he shouldn't do much searching in that time.
Okay. But did they talk to Phil? Did they ask him, hey, you know, tell us more about this Jeff guy? Did Phil tell the police about this Jeff guy?
Yeah, that's what, I don't know when he did, but they did.
Okay. And to your knowledge, were the police ever able to track this particular Jeff down?
They never found Jeff.
Never.
Never.
Okay. And we have to also keep in mind that you said that at some point Phil mentioned this 72, 73, 74 Impala, which by that time would have been a car that's like 14 years old. I'm guessing it would stick out quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the car wasn't found either?
Uh-uh.
All right. How long would you say that the police kind of worked on Tim's disappearance before they kind of just, I'm going to just be on, you know, state it frankly, let it go? You know, kind of just...
I really don't. When the GBI, I got them to get the GBI in on it, because Forsyth County done nothing.
Okay.
And the GBI didn't really do nothing either.
Okay.
I met them with the GBI, and they never went out there. It was 7.5 years later. I called up there every day, GBI. They laugh at me because I called every day. Anyway, Tommy Mercer was the one in charge, and he said, do you want to go out there and ride out there with me? We'll go over the ranch and, you know, walk it. And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. That was 7.5 years later. I said, well, I don't know the way from Cummins. You get me to Peachtree Industrial, and I'll show you where the ranch is. So we went to Peachtree Industrial, and I went down to Peachtree Industrial and showed him where the ranch was. He said, Warren, this is Gwinnett County. Because there was no sign that said Forsyth County. Next week, I went up there, and there was a brand new sign up there saying Forsyth County.
They put up a sign finally?
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a sign about a mile and a half on down the road that said Forsyth County. That was Old Atlanta Road, so I thought that was the county line.
Of course.
Old Atlanta Road runs parallel the other way.
Okay. So what you're saying is the police were very confused, and their questioning and looking into this really didn't take them anywhere. Yeah.
I mean, that's 7.5 years. He didn't know what a ranch, GBI didn't know what a ranch was. That tells me how much they done.
Okay. At any point, let's move on to this next point. At any time after Tim disappeared, did you have an opportunity, to track down the owners? My understanding is it was an Artie or Arthur Karp was the owner.
Yeah.
K-A-R-P.
Yeah. I never got in touch with them.
No.
I tried, but I couldn't. I never could find them. Get in touch with them.
Okay.
Like I say, they didn't have all this sensitive phone stuff back then.
That is true, unfortunately. That's true. And then we also know that the Artie's son was Bill, and I know that his name has appeared in one of the articles covering Tim's disappearance. Bill Karp.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. So you never spoken to them? Do you know if the police ever spoke to them?
I don't really know.
Okay. Do you think that back then, or even to this day in 2019, do you believe that anybody in the Karp family even knows that Tim disappeared from a farm they owned? Do you think they even know? I guess they do.
Yeah, they should. Well, Bob in that article said that he knew about it, but said nobody on the farm knew where Tim went.
Okay.
But Bob's deceased now, they said.
Okay. I think his name's Bill. There's Art. I think there's Artie, and I think the name in the article is Bill Karp, I think.
Oh, okay.
But what you're saying, though, also is nobody in the Karp family has ever tried to contact you. To ever offer up any sympathies, any condolences. We're sorry that your son, who was an employee at our farm, disappeared. Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, okay. The listeners should know that the Karp last name Carp, and this family is allegedly from Florida, where I live now. So if anybody wants to try to look into them, what happened to the Sleepy Fox farm after Tim disappeared?
Well, they've sold it. It's a subdivision now.
It's a subdivision, so their house is on that property now.
Right.
Okay.
There are a bunch of them.
Okay, and how long after Tim disappeared did the farm, close up, go out of business?
I think it was 1990 when they closed.
So not so long, like just 3 years after his disappearance.
I don't even think it was quite 3 years.
Okay. I want to touch upon something we've already talked about. You talked about Stacy, your one son, 1 year younger than Tim, driving Tim back, and he said he had a gun pulled him. Unfortunately, this was a story after Tim disappeared. Did Stacy ever tell you who it was that pulled the gun on him?
Well, he didn't know.
Okay. Did he ever describe the person to you? Could it have been a description that would make it mean that Phil did it, or Dave did it, or one of the women did it? Anything?
No, he never did say. He didn't.
Okay.
I guess he didn't want to bother me with it.
All right. But I'm wondering, is Stacy still around today? Is he still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. But still, he has never given you a description of the person that pulled a gun on him on that farm.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, maybe you should ask him about that. I would think, I've never had a gun pulled on me in my life, but I think if I would remember that person's face for the rest of my life if I lived. You know what I mean? That's what I guess that's what I'm asking you. Okay, so he had this gun pulled on him, but he didn't bring this up until after Tim disappeared, which, I'm going to be just honest with you, I don't know what to make of that.
I don't either.
Okay, so if the listeners are paying very close attention to this, early on we talked about how Tim did not have a driver's license, but you said that the week before he disappeared, he actually had to go to court or something because he got a speeding ticket. I mean, how did that happen? What happened there?
Well, I think it was driving without license, speeding and driving without license. I don't know who.
Mm-hmm. Whose car was it?
I really don't know.
Okay. Do you know, I know that you said he was going that Tuesday, which I think it would have been February 3rd. I guess it would be the Tuesday of that week before he disappeared. Do you have any idea when he got the speeding ticket?
No, I sure don't. I didn't even know about it until somebody said he was going to court.
Okay.
Court that day.
All right, and he did not explain the circumstances under which he got caught? None. Okay. Once again, I'm only trying to relate my personal relationship with my father who is still alive. I'm thinking that if I was 18 years old and my dad would want to know why I got it, even though I would be considered an adult, if I told him that I got a speeding ticket, I think my dad would have asked me, what the hell you were doing, Ed? And why are you driving without a driver's license? You didn't do any of those things?
Yeah, I did, but I was just over there.
Didn't want to talk.
He lived.
Okay.
He lived in Pine Lake at one time.
All right.
We did. Yeah.
So he didn't want to talk about it?
Not really.
Okay. Do you know where he got caught speeding?
Pine Lake's a little small town. They have one police officer.
Okay. Is that near Sleepy Fox Farm?
No, it's in DeKalb County.
And he never explained what he was doing over there? How many miles would you say? How many miles would you say that county is from Sleepy Fox Farm?
It's about the same distance, about 20, 25 miles.
25 miles.
Yeah.
Do you believe that Tim was in that car because he was doing some work for the farm?
It should be.
Okay. Okay. And is it a possibility that he was doing this on orders from Phil?
I believe so.
Okay. And the only reason you found out about it is because he told you about it on that Tuesday.
Yeah, he told me about the ticket, yeah.
Okay. Have any idea how much the ticket was or the fine? Anything like that?
No, he didn't discuss that.
Okay. All right, so
made it for him anyway.
Okay, so I have to tell you, and I think I've told you this before, it seems that Tim didn't want to tell you a lot, Warren.
Well, there might have been some stuff he didn't want to tell me.
Yeah. It seems, I have to admit that it seems a little strange to me that, he had some issue at the farm in early December. Kids, but during the whole month of December, he never, really expounds or further elaborates on what exactly happened. It's still very general. He didn't want to talk about it. You didn't talk about it. Then when he goes back to the farm, never explains why he goes back. You never, it's, once again, it seems like there just wasn't a lot of communication going on there. And I realize you're a working man, working and everything, but these are things that, of course, would be nice to know now. It just doesn't seem that Tim wanted to talk about them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I could tell you what I believe, but you don't want.
Yeah, we're not gonna theorize because we don't know. We would know more, I think, if Tim was more forthcoming about some of these things. If he had said why he was in somebody else's car, driving without a license and speeding. I mean, that might help us with his disappearance. I'm sure you realize that. Especially if Tim was doing something illegal, which we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about Dave Stewart. He's kind of the other, one of the other adults, and he had a different story. We'll remind the listeners that Phil said that Tim got picked up that previous Friday by a guy, Jeff, who was driving some old Impala. What did Dave say?
Dave said he was driving a white pickup truck.
Did he ever say anything about a guy named Jeff?
No. I mean, I got that out of the paper. He didn't tell me personally.
Oh.
I personally never met.
Okay, so he didn't tell you that. In fact, you said that you and Dave have never talked.
No, I don't recollect talking to Dave at all.
Okay, so but he made a comment, what, to the newspaper, to the police, that
Police report, yeah.
That Tim left in a white pickup truck.
Yeah.
Okay. Did Dave? So Dave was one of the other farm hands there. I'm guessing Tim and he worked together. Do you think that they knew each other well?
Well, I don't know. They knew. Yeah, they must have, because Dave Stewart said in the paper, he said, I don't know much about Tim, but he said, well, wouldn't watch TV because they lived in the loft apartment away from the farmhouse. They lived in the loft apartment. Dave Stewart and his Sally, Phil's daughter, they lived upstairs in the apartment above the barn.
Okay.
He said Tim would come over and watch TV, and he said he would eat you out of house and home. So he must have knew him pretty well.
Well, that sounds like most teenagers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but he gave Phil told you one story, and Dave told the newspaper a totally different story, totally different type of vehicle, and then never mentioned this guy Jeff's name. Okay. In the last, and I know that you've been working on Tim's case for as long as he's been missing. Have you ever had a chance to try to track down Dave Stewart? And do you believe that he's still alive?
I really don't know. I tried to track him down with old cell phones, all I got. I can't get in touch to find nothing on him. Okay.
Let's talk about Phil. I think a lot of people are going to be suspicious of him. He told this story about this 1970s Impala that was never tracked down. He says this guy Jeff, that he doesn't know his last name, don't know how he know him, nothing. Doesn't match Dave's story, if we can even believe Dave. And we have to remind everybody also that Tim called, or Phil called Tim an SOB. We're not going to use those words. Back in December when you talked to him on the phone.
Yeah.
Right?
It was late November.
Right, late November. Thank you. Now we have to remember, Phil's daughter Dawn lived at the farm, and I guess Phil's had some other children there too. Did Tim ever say anything to you about Phil's daughter Dawn?
He really never said anything, but every time I took Tim up there, she was always running around in bikinis.
But then she was like 14 or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But Tim never said anything to you about maybe being attracted to her or anything like that?
No, he didn't say nothing.
Okay. Do you think...
Teenager, I would have been.
Okay, right. Well, you never know. Once again, this is one of those things about Tim not, relaying much to other people. Do you know if Tim ever said anything to any of your other kids about having anything going on with Dawn?
No, not that I remember.
Okay. At any point has Phil, and his last name is Klinger, Klinger, and people are going to find out he's not a very good guy. At any point, did anybody ever ask him to take a lie detector test?
Yeah, Tommy Murphy did, the GBI.
All right, and what happened?
And Tommy Murphy got mad. He said he took him to Atlanta to take a polygraph test, and Phil had a heart attack, before with all the scar. He said he couldn't take the polygraph test because he had a heart problem. Tommy Murphy got mad about that. They Phil was an ex-detective in Dade County, Florida, and they even know they wouldn't give him a polygraph test.
All right, so let's say that one more time in case the listeners. Are you saying that Phil used to be a police officer?
That's what they said. It's detective in Dade County, Florida.
Huh.
That's what the GBI told me.
Okay. I'm sure some people are going to look into that. Okay. And somehow, though, he's in Dade County, Florida, and now he's up here working on this horse farm in Georgia. And we have to remember that the owners of the farm are also from Florida. So I'm wondering if all of them knew each other. Maybe Phil knew the owners from when he lived in Florida, too. That's something that's kind of jumping.
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay. So what we're saying is that Phil never took this lie detector test.
No, they wouldn't give it to him because he's on heart medication or something.
Okay. Do you know how soon this was after Tim disappeared that they tried to do this?
It's probably about 6 months.
Okay. What has gone on with Phil's life? I'm not saying you've been able to keep perfect tabs on him, 100% tab of what he's been doing in the last 32 years, but just in general, what has Phil done with himself since Tim disappeared?
Since his disappearance, I couldn't tell you nothing about it.
No.
Spoke to him.
Has he had any problems with the law?
Yeah, he did have. I saw that in the newspaper. They had the school system when it called them out about the kids that was in the school, Dawn and her younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, they found weapons, pot, and paraphernalia.
Drugs?
Yeah.
Drugs, okay.
Yeah, they took the kids from them.
All right, so Phil had his kids taken from him, okay.
$10,000 in cash and 2 sawed-off shotguns, several rifles, and several pistols.
Wow, okay. And I think we do know because of, and the listeners should know that this is, I found out about Tim's disappearance from my friend Anthony over at his blog, Crime Blogger 1983.blogspot.com. Of course, he was just on the program just not so long ago for the Lucero Sarabia disappearance, but he has also covered Tim's case in depth, and that's how I found out about Tim's case, and that's how Warren and I are now talking. And Anthony has written a lot about Tim's disappearance over there. But the reason I'm saying this is because Anthony has detailed some of the issues that Phil has had since 1987, and we know the farm was closed in 1990. And the listeners should also know that after Warren and I are done with this conversation, I'm going to read you some correspondence that Anthony had recently, very recently, within the last week, with with Phil's daughter Dawn, and she sounds like a piece of work. Did you, Warren? You've gotten to read what Dawn had to say, right? You got to read that.
I did.
She sounds a little off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Please. Yes. And once again, the listeners will hear what the correspondence was between Anthony and Dawn after we are done with this interview. I'm not going to go through it right now, but Warren, you've gotten to see it, right? You've gotten to see I've
seen it.
Okay,
and I sure did.
Yeah, and you have that in your possession now, which I think is good. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they ever bring out any dogs to the farm to sniff around to see if Tim's remains were on the property?
I did. I hired some fellow from Kentucky to come down with his dogs to search the farm.
Mm-hmm. And anything?
GBI didn't, no. Tommy Messer went out there with them, but they wouldn't let me on the farm while they were searching, so I was out there I had a news crew out there with me.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't let us on the farm.
Okay. So the dogs weren't allowed to go on the farm?
Well, the dogs did, but they wouldn't let me.
Oh, they wouldn't let you? Okay.
Yeah.
What year was this? When was this?
It was, if I had to, I'd say that, I'd say, it's hard to think, 2 years ago. I'd say right after I went up there with time med.
So what month? Just give us an approximate month and year that the dogs went out there.
I'd say 1994 or something like that.
Okay, so this would have been after the farm was already closed.
Oh no, the farm was still open, so it could have been 90. It'd be like 89.
Okay, so what you're saying is it wasn't very soon after Tim disappeared.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tim was in the Mission Children's Help Center from Florida too. I know you've heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
They've closed since then, but he was in their magazines.
Right.
And that's where I got the fellow from Florida. He had a thing in there about his dogs finding a 25-year-old baby after 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
They found the remains of a baby.
Okay. Did those dogs find anything?
No.
No. Okay.
They said the ground was so bad though they couldn't do a lot. Well, I guess it's all the horse manure and everything else. And it's one place kind of swampy.
When you finally did get the dogs on the property, were all the same people working there?
Yeah, they were there.
They were there.
I don't know whether they was there that day or not, but they were there.
Okay, so they were still there. And you've already stated that at some point after the farm went out of business, or maybe they just closed down, we don't know if it went out of business, but that eventually that became a subdivision. So some big company bought it and sold the plots of land, and people live on there now.
Pulte Homes wasn't built on the property.
Pulte Homes, okay.
I mean, I went up there after they drained the lake, While they was grading out the houses, I went up there. And I went up there and walked through the lake after they drained it.
Mm-hmm.
And still didn't find anything. But
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you do have a belief. We'll talk about this very quickly. You do have a belief about what was going on the farm because of somebody telling you something. What did this person tell you as to what was going on in the farm?
well, she told me there was drugs up there, lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
She said she boarded a horse up there, and she was up at Dave Stewart and Sally's apartment. And there's bags and bags of clothes up there. She said, "You never wash clothes." She said she took the clothes off the top and said, "Oh, this is pot."
When did this? What is this woman's name, if you can say it?
It's Eva Kahn.
Eva. How do you spell her last name, if you could?
Cann, I believe.
See, Con.
Coun. Kahn.
All right, Eva Con. Okay.
Oh, Conn.
Yeah, there's probably a couple different variations, but that'll be good. So Eva Con, she had a horse up there, and she happened upon Dave and his wife having a lot of marijuana in their place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she told Snell police that too, but Snell didn't have no jurisdiction up there anyway.
Mm.
When did she tell you this?
When I went over to her house, being the newspaper reporter.
Okay.
But he wanted to take her pictures and put it in the paper. She said, "No, because Phil knows me and he knows where I live and he'll come and kill me." She said, "He'll do it too."
Okay.
When I ask you when, what I mean is, what year and month did she finally tell you about this, what she saw?
And that's 32 years ago. It's hard.
Well, let's just do it this way. Was it very quick, soon after Tim disappeared, or was it like in 1995?
No, it was soon after this.
Soon after. Okay. And did you tell this to the police? Did they ever go over there, try to find out if there was a grow house on that property?
I don't know if it's a grow house. I think they dropped it in bales.
Dropped it in bales. So somebody was like flying over with a plane and dropping it on the property?
Helicopter. My niece lived over there behind the farm, and she said there's helicopters somebody over there dropping stuff out.
That's interesting.
Okay. And we do have to remember that Tim was in somebody's car, driving illegally, speeding illegally. And this is what I mentioned before, very possible. I'm going to ask you, if Tim was involved in something illegal, and he would surely know that growing marijuana in Georgia at that time was illegal. I think it's still illegal now. Do you think that's something he would tell you or would tell one of his brothers?
This is after the fact. My son said he came by the house here on a motorcycle. It had pot in it, in the saddlebags on the motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
That might have been what he was driving. And even his grandmother said he came down there on a motorcycle.
Okay.
That's about, I'd say, 5-6 miles down the road from my house.
All right, so it very well may be that Tim started working there and found out that this was a horse farm, but more likely it was a marijuana drop place, and that's what he was involved in. And the horse farm was just a front. It was just a front.
Yeah.
Okay.
They say they're trying to sell the pot, but said that they won't say nothing. They said they have so much pot up there they won't miss it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The way that woman talked.
Okay.
He wouldn't. I guess they would. They probably know every ounce of it. I don't really know.
Okay.
Well, that sounds plausible. I would have liked, I would certainly like it more. I'm not saying that this woman's lying or anything, but it, once again, it just doesn't seem that Tim was saying much, and maybe that's why he wasn't saying much, because he knew he was something that was involved in something that was illegal. Very possible.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now we should note that just within the last, 24 hours, and we're doing this interview on October 29th, 2019, just within the last 24 hours, you've had, so please do not say the person's name, but you did have somebody who contacted you about Tim's disappearance.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
This morning.
Okay. And you've had an opportunity to call this person?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We're not going to get into what the person said. Okay. We're not going to do that because
Okay.
that's how rumors get started. But this would be a person, let me just speak for you, Warren. This might be a person who is in a position to know maybe some things. It's not Phil. It's not Dave. It's somebody else who, that once again has an opportunity to maybe know something. We'll just have to see. But you've gotten to talk to this person.
Yes, I did.
Okay. How long? Do not use the person's name. How long would you say you talked to this person?
That's 15 minutes.
Okay. In your opinion, does this person sound believable? In your opinion?
My opinion, they did.
Okay.
And did you pass this information along to GBI?
Yes, I did. And he said he did.
Okay. All right. So we'll have to see what comes of that. We'll just have to see. All right. Of course, as Warren, and Warren knows this already, I'm fairly dubious when people come forward after 30-some years, saying that they've known something. I can't help but be dubious and doubtful. But let's, maybe this will take us in a very positive direction. Okay. All right. And I'm hoping that the coverage by Anthony and then the coverage, of course, by this program Unfound certainly helps you. Get some answers. Yeah, of course. What's this been like for you, Warren? 32 years. It's coming up on 33 years for you. And Tim's stepmother.
It's just not knowing. Like part of you is gone. Just not knowing. Feeling the helplessness.
Yeah, helpless, feeling helpless.
Yeah, helpless. And feel like part of you being gone. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
How have your other kids handled this disappearance? How did they react to it back in 1987, and how do they feel about it now?
He was 5 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's Tim's half brother.
Yeah.
My wife and I now, and Tim loved him. I mean, he loved all of them, but he always carried a picture of him around because he's proud of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, if I get lost, will I find Tim?
Right.
He said he grabbed my wife by the arms, and I hear Tim screaming for help.
Wow.
But
Do you have a Facebook page or anything set up for Tim?
yeah, I've got him on several different sites.
Okay. Well, I know he's on the Charley Project site. I know he's on NAMUS, but do you have like a Facebook page? I know you're on Facebook.
I'm on all of them, really.
Okay. All
That I
right.
know of.
Okay. Good. Well, Warren, I know you're not a young man. Okay, so it's good. There aren't too many older people, on social media. So I'm glad to hear that you are out there. And I'm going to say, no offense to you, but I'm going to guess you're probably the oldest guest I've had on the program, and I'm thrilled to have you here. I hope we can. I hope we can help. For sure.
Yeah, I'm old enough to be here.
Yeah. If I may ask, how old are you, Warren? How old are you?
I'm not but 75.
75. Okay.
I told my wife I can live to 150. I believe I will.
Okay. I hope you will too. My dad is 82, so I know what it's like to talk to men of your generation. So okay, my dad's 82. All right. All right. Well, any last words before we complete this interview, Warren?
Yeah, we just thanks about him and everything. We just want answers. You know how it is. You'd be the same way.
I would be, of course. Of course. Right. Well, I can assure you that, please.
I appreciate all you doing and all of that.
Well, I think I can speak for Anthony that, we're going to be here for you. As long as this case is unsolved, we're going to be here trying to figure out, what we can do to help. Obviously, we've both given you a lot of advice in the last few weeks regarding, a bunch of different things. Yeah. And, so anything that ever pops up, we're here to help. We'll always give you good advice.
Okay, that's what I need.
Okay.
I'm waiting on the police coming back now to Forsyth County.
I hope they do.
And the GBI, but they had. But I appreciate all you doing and all that they've done. They done an amazing job.
Okay, yeah, he does nice work. That's true. Warren, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. I tell all of my guests this is just the beginning of us knowing each other. We're going to probably be conversing at least once in a while for the foreseeable future. And offering you help. When you need it, need anything. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And God bless you.
Well,
thank you. And you're welcome. And that was my interview with Warren Guy, father of Timothy Guy. I thank him for joining me and all of you on this episode. I also want to thank Anthony at crimeblogger1983.blogspot.com for letting me know about this disappearance. Warren also wanted me to send a shout out to Alana Keegan and Dina Maddox Rush. He tells me they've written some good articles about Tim's disappearance. Allow me to now read the messages Phil's daughter Dawn sent Anthony recently when he inquired about Tim's disappearance. Dawn in a message wrote, "If he went missing," meaning Tim, "he deserved it. This is how we work," she wrote. "Cool, just one case this time. Oh well, they can't touch me." That's one of the things that Dawn wrote. This, once again, is Phil Klinger's daughter. And this is a message that she sent to Anthony just within the last month. And I have more. In the next part of the conversation, she tells Anthony, "Tell your friend that is doing this cold cases, give it up. Effing with Italians isn't smart." But of course, she wrote out the entire word effing. "Like I said, he is looking at only one cold cases. Will my family, nobody can touch me, and my dad is dead. You all have fun." Once again, this is from Dawn, Phil's daughter. Next, she wrote, "The FBI, CIA, DEA, GBI have been looking into cases for a very long time. They will never find nothing. Trust me, we are Italians. Our bloodline goes way back. And as for Tim, oh well." Now I'll read kind of an exchange between Dawn and Anthony. Dawn starts, "No, you didn't. I just think it's funny as hell." Anthony says, "Okay, so he deserved it," meaning Tim. "Some people do, I understand that. Believe me. Can you tell me why? Was Tim a killer himself or something?" Dawn responds, "Have a good day." Anthony says, "You as well, ma'am. I apologize. Thank you for taking the time." She responds, "You are so welcome. Sorry I didn't tell you what you wanted. I'm not that stupid." I know most of you, if not all of you, are going to be very suspicious of those responses. I got to tell you, I'm not sure what to make of them. Yes, they look very bad. In fact, they look so bad, I can't help but wonder if she wasn't just playing around with Anthony. And that's no offense against him, because I hold Anthony in very high regard. But did Dawn think Anthony really was a troll? So she decided to play it way over the top. Or maybe Dawn has mental issues and Anthony caught her on a bad day. I just can't totally believe that Dawn would try to act that blatantly, virtually implicating herself and everyone on the farm in Tim's disappearance, and actually mean it. But maybe. I'm going to leave all of you to think about that as I move on to some of the topics we covered in the interview. There's so much to dissect in this case, but it's not easy to do since Tim himself seemed to keep a lot to himself. He hardly told his family why he didn't want to go back to Sleepy Fox Farm for December. Then he turned around and never stated why he chose to go back. The only statement Tim made to anyone about his time at the farm was his comment that Phil's kids would get in trouble and Phil would take it out on Tim. A piece of information that cannot be verified by anyone. And Tim certainly could have been lying. And even if we take it as the truth, that doesn't explain why Tim then went back to work on the farm in January. We can also look at this from the exact opposite angle. Phil called Tim an SOB in November 1986, with no explanation as to why he said that. So if that's the way Phil felt about Tim, why did he take Tim back in January 1987? I don't get it. I also have this question about Phil. Why did he bother to call Warren on Monday to let him know that Tim didn't show up for work? What I mean by that is this. The reason Warren didn't go pick up Tim that previous Friday was because Tim told his father he was going to a horse show for the weekend, presumably with Phil and the rest of the people on the farm. Yet by Phil calling Warren on Monday, it's fairly clear Phil was implying there was no show that past weekend, or at least that Tim wasn't supposed to go with them to the show. I know, many of you think Phil is the best suspect in this case, so there's no reason to believe anything he says. However, if Phil is the perpetrator of this disappearance, why did he come up with such a flimsy story regarding Jeff and the Impala? Remember, he had 3 days to think of a cover story. And that's the best he could do. Why didn't Phil tell Warren, well, we went to this horse show and lost track of Tim and couldn't find him, and we kind of thought you might have picked him up? That would have been a more plausible story. Unless there wasn't a horse show down on the farm at all that weekend. Now that's an interesting thought. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.